She had no husband, no name, and no place to go. In the dusty corners of a forgotten frontier town, a young woman lived like a ghost among the living. Nobody knew where she came from. Nobody asked her real name. She was just the girl who swept floors at the saloon and slept in the back room when the owner allowed it. Her days started before dawn and ended long after sunset. She scrubbed tables stained with whiskey and blood. She dodged grabbing hands and cruel words from drunk men who saw her as less than human. The saloon girls pitied her but kept their distance. Even they had more status than she did. She owned nothing but the worn dress on her back and a pair of boots with holes that let in the cold. When winter came, she shivered through endless nights. When summer blazed, she worked in stifling heat with no escape. Her hands were rough and cut from years of hard labor. Her face was pale from never seeing much sunlight. The townspeople called her "girl" or "you there" when they bothered to speak to her at all. Most of the time they looked right through her as if she were invisible. She had learned to make herself small and quiet. Speaking up only brought trouble. Dreams were a luxury she could not afford. But everything changed the day he rode into town. The feared man came with the sound of thunder. His horse was black as midnight and twice as powerful as any beast the town had ever seen. When people saw him coming down the main street, they scattered like leaves in a storm. Mothers pulled their children inside. Shop owners locked their doors. Even the brave men who wore badges suddenly found urgent business elsewhere. His name was spoken in whispers across 3 territories. Some said he was a bounty hunter who never failed to bring in his target. Others claimed he was an outlaw who had robbed more banks than anyone could count. A few swore he was something darker, a man who had made deals with forces no decent person should know about. He was tall and broad, with shoulders that filled doorways. His coat was long and black, and it moved around him like smoke. His hat cast shadows over his face, but you could see his eyes. They were the kind of eyes that looked right through you and saw every secret you had ever kept. His hands never strayed far from the guns at his hips. The feared man walked into the saloon like he owned it. The room fell silent, except for the sound of his boots on the wooden floor. Even the piano player stopped mid-song. Everyone watched and waited to see what he would do next. His gaze swept the room until it landed on her. She was in the corner, trying to make herself invisible as always, but this time it did not work. He looked at her like he could see everything she was and everything she could become. For the first time in her life, someone was truly seeing her. He walked over to where she stood, frozen with fear. His voice was low and rough when he spoke. He did not ask her name because he knew she did not have one that mattered. He did not ask if she wanted to come with him because he could see that she had nowhere else to go. He simply told her that she belonged to him now. Before she could speak or think or run, he lifted her up and carried her out of the saloon. Nobody tried to stop him. Nobody said a word. The saloon owner just watched his unpaid worker disappear and went back to pouring drinks. The feared man placed her on his horse like she weighed nothing at all. She sat in front of him, feeling the power of the animal beneath her and the solid presence of the man behind her. As they rode out of town, she looked back once at the only life she had ever known. It was not much of a life, but it was all she had. Now she was riding into the unknown with a man who could kill without blinking. They traveled for days across empty land that seemed to stretch forever. He did not talk much, but he made sure she had food and water. When night came, he gave her his blanket and slept between her and any danger that might come from the darkness. She learned that he was not the monster people said he was. He was dangerous, yes. He was feared for good reasons. But he was also careful with her in ways that surprised them both. When she stumbled while walking, he caught her without making her feel weak. When she was scared, he did not mock her fear. His camp was hidden in a canyon that few people knew about. It was a place where wanted men could rest without looking over their shoulders. There were others there, men who rode with him or owed him favors. They treated her with respect because she was his, and nobody crossed the feared man. She had her own space in a small cabin he had built with his own hands. It was simple but clean, with a real bed and windows that let in light. It was more than she had ever had before. For the first time in years, she slept through the night without fear. The feared man gave her clothes that fit and boots that kept out the cold. He made sure she had enough to eat. When she got sick from too many years of poor food and hard living, he took care of her until she was strong again. He never asked for anything in return, but she knew that people like her did not get something for nothing. She waited for him to show his true intentions. She waited for the trap to close. She waited for the price she would have to pay for his protection. While she waited, she learned about the man who had taken her. His real name was known to very few. He had been many things in his life. A soldier in wars most people wanted to forget. A lawman in places where law meant nothing. An outlaw when the law failed him. He carried scars from bullets and knives. He had enemies in every territory, but he also had a code he lived by. He protected those who could not protect themselves. He kept his word even when it cost him. He never hurt anyone who did not deserve it. The other men in camp told her stories about him, how he had tracked a killer across 2 states to bring justice for a murdered family, how he had given his last dollar to a widow whose husband died in his arms, how he had faced down 10 men to protect a town that had never shown him kindness. She began to understand that he was not just feared, he was respected by those who knew him best. The men who rode with him would die for him because they knew he would do the same for them. As weeks turned into months, she found herself changing. The fear that had lived in her chest for so long began to fade. She walked taller and spoke more often. She laughed at jokes around the campfire. She began to feel like a person instead of just a shadow. The feared man watched these changes with something that might have been pride. He never said he cared about her, but his actions spoke louder than words. When she cut her hand while helping with camp work, he bandaged it himself. When nightmares from her old life woke her up, he sat with her until morning. But their peaceful time could not last forever. Word came that men from her old town were looking for her. The saloon owner claimed she had stolen money when she left. It was a lie. But lies could be as dangerous as truth on the frontier. A sheriff with a badge and bad intentions was riding with them. The feared man could have sent her away to protect himself from trouble. Instead, he prepared for war. When the men from town arrived at the canyon, they found the feared man waiting for them. He stood alone in the clearing, but she knew his men were hidden in the rocks above. The sheriff tried to sound brave as he demanded her return. The feared man's voice was calm when he spoke. He told them that she was under his protection now. He said that anyone who tried to take her would answer to him. The sheriff laughed and said that no outlaw could stand against the law. That was when she made her choice. She walked out of the cabin and stood beside the feared man. She told the sheriff and the others that she was exactly where she wanted to be. She said that if they had a problem with that, they could settle it with the man who had given her a life worth living. The sheriff reached for his gun, thinking he could end this quickly. He was wrong. The feared man was faster than lightning and more accurate than death. Before the sheriff could clear leather, he was on the ground with a bullet through his shoulder. The other men saw what happened to someone who challenged the feared man and decided they had urgent business elsewhere. As the dust settled and the cowards rode away, The feared man turned to look at her. For the first time since she had known him, he smiled. It was not a big smile, but it changed his whole face. She realized that she had never seen him truly happy until that moment. That night around the campfire, one of his men called her by a name she had never heard before. It was a good name, a strong name. When she looked at the feared man, he nodded. This was what he had decided to call her, and his word made it real. She had a name now. She had a place where she belonged. She had people who would fight for her as she would fight for them. The scared, nameless girl from the saloon was gone forever. In the months that followed, she learned to ride and shoot. She learned to stand up for herself and others who needed protection. The feared man taught her that strength came not from never being afraid, but from doing what was right even when fear tried to stop you. She discovered that love could grow in the strangest places between the most unlikely people. The feared man never said he loved her with words, but she felt it in every careful touch and protective act. She showed her love by standing beside him when danger came and by bringing light to his dark world. Years later, people would tell stories about the feared man and the woman who tamed him. But she knew the truth. She had not tamed him at all. He had simply found someone worth being gentle for, and she had found someone strong enough to keep her safe while she learned to be strong herself. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes a person needs to lose everything before they can find what they were truly meant to have. Sometimes it takes a feared man to show a forgotten woman that she was always worthy of love. Her old life of emptiness and fear was gone forever. In its place was something beautiful and real and worth fighting for. What started as taking without asking became the greatest gift either of them ever received.